Hello, this is Renee Kumor, and I'm with Blue Ridge Bookfest 2015. Along with our partner, Blue Ridge Community College, we like to have an intimate discussion with some of our presenting authors each year. And this year, we've invited Tommy Hayes to join us. Tommy Hayes has written two well-received novels. The first is The Pleasure Was Mine, and it's a book for adults. And the second is a book that has become very popular with middle graders, and that is What I Came to Tell You. And What I Came to Tell You has won the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance Award and has been recommended by the Atlanta Constitution as one of the 12 books for 2013 for young readers. So parents, when you're looking for something that your children should be reading, What I Came to Tell You might be a good option for you. But Tommy, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I'm going to start this interview really soft because you're from Asheville, close by, and in your real life, you are on the faculty at UNCA. So tell us something about.
Well, at UNC Asheville, I direct the Great Smokies Writing Program, which is a community writing program. And we offer classes all around Western North Carolina, 12 classes a semester, and they're for people in the community. And we've been doing that for 15 years now, and we started out with a couple of classes, and now we have 11 or 12 a semester. And so I do that, and then I teach in the Master of Liberal Arts program at UNC Asheville, teach creative writing in that as well. And I teach in the low residency MFA program as well, so I do a lot of teaching of creative writing.
Well, when you run these programs, I was doing some research and found that you talk about if you're afraid to write about, what you're afraid to write about, write about it.
Right.
What does that mean?
There's a workshop I give with that title, and what it really means is that if you're afraid to write about it, it probably suggests that there is something at stake for you with that story. And so if you do write about it, it will be charged and emotional and compelling in a way that other stories might not be. And sometimes as writers, we tend to shy away from those things that that scare us to write about for whatever reasons we may have. And so it's my job, one of my jobs as a creative writing teacher, to help people figure out ways to write about those things that they have, for one reason or another, have been resistant to write about. And oftentimes the reasons aren't really that hard to overcome.
In your 12-week program with your Great Smokies writing series.
They're 10-week and 15-week.
Okay. What are the number of students that you have?
Probably we have 100 and something students every semester, and the classes are usually about 10 or 12 each, so they're workshop size.
And do you do this online or
no?
like
It's
face-to-face?
all in person. You know, it's not online.
Oh my goodness, that keeps you pretty busy right there. In addition to your
I
schedule.
teach one class in that, and I direct it. And then, as I say, I also teach in the Master of Liberal Arts, which is a wonderful, it's basically an evening, part-time, usually Master of Liberal Arts program that people, often the same types of students take those classes. But the MLA is more formal. I mean, you have a trajectory, you have, 2 or 3 years of taking courses, and at the end you're finished with a degree. Whereas the Great Smokies is just for people who want to write, and you can take that class and not take another, or we've had many people taking classes with us for years.
Well, I'm just interested in that because as with our work with Blue Ridge Bookfest, I'm always stunned at the number of writers who are just in our region. For example, you're in Asheville. We have a lot of writers with us this year who are within Western North Carolina.
Absolutely, and it makes my job wonderful because I'm able to hire a lot of those writers to teach for us. So it complements them too, because to teach, you know, there aren't a lot of occupations that go well probably with writing, but teaching does because it tends to be more flexible. And so writers are usually really happy to be asked to teach for us. So.
Well, that leads me into talking about the two books that we have here. One book is clearly for the adult market,
Right.
And the other book, did you start writing it for the young adult market, or it turned out there?
Yeah. With what I came to tell you, it started out that my son came to me. He was about 12, and he said, "Daddy, I've read all the books in the house I want to read." And I said, "Oh, okay." All the ones that interested him. And I said, "Well, there's a book you haven't read." And it's a book, it's not here, it's called In the Family Way, and it's set in Greenville in South Carolina, where I grew up. Set in the 60s, during my childhood time. It's not autobiographical, but Max said, "All right, I'll read it," you know, and he can read a book in a night if he wants to, or two. And so I noticed the bookmark stalled out a couple of chapters in. So at dinner one night I said, "Max, you know, what's the deal? I noticed you're not reading." And that wasn't a young adult book. It's a book for adults. And he said, "Well, Daddy," and remember, this is set during my childhood time. He said, "Daddy, that's really good historical fiction." And so I went,
Ouch.
So my life is history. So I started thinking I would love to write a book about a time and a place that my children knew. And that was Asheville. And so it's set in Asheville. And I actually draw on when Max was really young, he would spend a lot of time in a bamboo patch behind our neighbor's house. And I knew that bamboo would play a part in this novel, and it does. It ends up being a big part of what I came to tell you. So I did have the impulse to write for a younger audience, but over time, I just forgot. It takes me a while to write a book and many revisions, and over time, I just thought, this is a book like I write any of my other books. And so by the time I was done, I really hadn't thought about, well, it's more a young adult, middle grade book. I just thought, and my agent said, "It's great, it's done." And then she said, "Oh, by the way, you know, it's a young adult book." And I went, "Oh, really?" You know, so then that's how it was sold. But a lot of people who've read this book feel like it's as much for adults too. So, you know, it's really interesting how the markets have become sort of segregated. You know, To Kill a Mockingbird would probably be considered a young adult book now. And they didn't really, you know, it wasn't very long ago that they didn't divide the market the way they do now, but now they do. So it's more like where the book fit. It wasn't like I said, I will include this or I won't include this because, you know, it's for children. And so that's how it came about.
Well, I had designed a question to ask you about what do young readers say when they meet you and talk about this book. But I wanted to revise my question because just before we came in to do the taping, we met a young doctor, a physician, who came to talk about The Pleasure Was Mine.
Yes.
To tell us how in her hospice work, because this story is about a caregiver of his spouse who is suffering from Alzheimer's.
That's right.
And she's clearly said that your story was very true and sympathetic to caregiving, and that her group uses it to study.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to ask you the question,
Mm-hmm.
you're touching a lot of people with both of these books,
Mm.
because we also talked about a lady who came to Bookfest who wanted to tell you that she related to the story in What I Came to Tell You, because your youngsters lose their mother and she lost her father at the same age.
Right.
So I want you to talk to me. What are these people coming to tell you?
Well, I think they're coming to say that on some level the story I created met something in them. With The Pleasure Was Mine, which is the book about the wife with Alzheimer's, I got so many emails and letters. The book was used a lot in a lot of communities and in a lot of conferences because it's a story, but Alzheimer's is part of the crisis. So I got a lot of people telling me their stories, and so as a writer, what you're trying to do is make the world of your characters as accessible to the reader as you can, and you want your characters to be dealing with something with something that's at stake for them, something big. Otherwise, why waste the reader's time? So I tend to write, my stories rise up out of my family experiences. They're not autobiographical, but the central sort of tensions often end up being about something that are central to me. So, for instance, with The Pleasure Was Mine, my father had Alzheimer's, and my mother was caring for him. And I didn't want to write an autobiographical novel about it, but so I decided I would adopt the point of view of a cranky old uncle of mine, and switch things and flip things around so that this uncle, this character his wife would have Alzheimer's, and so I just invented a story. But beneath all of it, I mean, and I went with their story, but beneath it was this emotional core of what was going on with that family. And so I think when people come to me and say, you know, I really related to that, this happened to me, that something about that emotional core in them has been touched. But I don't have it all figured out. I have no idea.
Well,
really.
and clearly you were able to represent the challenges of a caregiver, whether you had it personally with your mother and your character, in this case was the husband, but you were able to, I'm sure, in part view the sacrifices and the challenges, and maybe even were drawn into some of having to share some of that responsibility or concern.
Right.
And I think that may be the core that you're talking about.
Right. It may be. You know, with that book, when I made the switches, I was actually writing a creative nonfiction. I mean, I was writing basically a memoir about my father in his last few years, and I was going home after they lived in Greenville, and I would come back here and sort of write our conversations, and I would write notes about it. And actually, I was trying to do a book that would be nonfiction but would read like a novel. But about halfway into that, it got really tedious and heavy. And so then I scrapped all those pages and I put them in a drawer. And I decided that I would try to write this novel, but adopt the voice of this uneducated uncle of mine who I loved. He was one of my favorite family members, but he wasn't married. He was a bachelor. And I started from there and then just moved into his world, and it became its own story. And when I did that, things like I was able to explore the subject with humor and some distance, whereas the other felt sort of ego bound. It felt sort of, I'm telling my story. I'm not, giving myself over to these characters' world. So when I did that, everything changed for me as far as the writing went, and it became a work I could just enter into rather than sort of going home and being true to what was happening at home. But the irony is that when it was all done, when that book was all done and published, somebody asked me to give a class on moving from memoir to novel. So I went back and looked at the pages that I'd written about Daddy and about things that had happened. And so many like bits of conversation, so many like scenes, possibilities were suggested in those pages that I'd written a long time ago and put in a drawer and had never looked at during the writing of the novel. But it clearly informed the novel itself. So that was interesting to me.
Well, how personal or how much of your family is in What I Came to Tell You?
And that's a good question. In a way, it's the least autobiographical. There is a death. I'm big on death. Novelists are big on death because it's a big event. It changes everything. It changes the family dynamics. So there's a death that happens before it takes place. The boys.
The story opens about a year after the mother
yes,
has died.
the boy Grover, his mother has died 6 months, I think, before the novel starts. And it's about how his father, who directs the Thomas Wolfe House, has sort of distanced himself and gone off to immerse himself in the Wolfe house. And he has a younger sister who he's ended up sort of taken care of a lot because the father has emotionally checked out and the mother's not there. So anyway, I'm sorry, I've lost track of the question.
I just wondered how autobiographical it was, but you told me that death is the focus, but it's not as autobiographical.
So the mother's death, there is, after the novel came out and a writer in Asheville was interviewing me, he said, so, where did this come from? Was there a death in your family? And then I realized, of course, my mother's mother died when she was 6 or 8. And that was always brewing in our family. She didn't really talk about it much, but it was a real awareness of sort of the fragility of life. And I'm sure that asserted itself when I was trying to think, so what is the crisis here? Also, there was a story in our neighborhood of a woman who was walking up Charlotte Street, and her husband had pulled over to see if she wanted a ride, just walking on the sidewalk, and to see if she wanted a ride, and she said, no, I'm exercising, and then she never came home. And she was hit by a car on the way home. And so in the book, she's actually hit by a car. So I am inspired by stories I hear as well.
Well, what was your son's comment?
Oh, my son. Well, so that discussion we had like 12, 13 maybe. And then I didn't work on that novel for a while. I worked on it a little bit. And then, so check back like 22 years. He's 22 years old, and the novel has come out. And his younger sister, who's college age, read it. And she said, Max, it's really good. You should read it. And did he read it? No. And then his girlfriend, Max's girlfriend, who had read all my books, she said, it's really good, Max. You should read it. He said, okay. Did not read it. And so what happened was Max is he's a physicist. I mean, he's a physics guy. And back when he was at UNC, he was still there, and it was the summer, and it was an internship, and it was 1.5 miles down in a South Dakota gold mine where they have a federal lab where they look for particles, neutrinos. But you're down there 9 hours a day. And I think it got a little slow because he finally read my novel, a mile and a half underground, stuck someplace where he couldn't do anything else. He read it for over a couple of days. And what did he say? He found a mistake. It was actually right before the final copy came out, and it was a big mistake, and my editor hadn't found it. So we fixed it.
Well,
there you go.
That helps to have an editor physicist in the family.
It does.
Well, I have to tell you, there's a small stand of bamboo at Connemara, at Carl Sandburg's place.
Yes.
And after I had read your book, I was walking along the trail up toward the goat farm, and I looked at it, and I had to walk up to it to see how you created such space and almost like rooms inside the bamboo. And at that point, I could see what you meant with regard to how the bamboo created those spaces for the art rooms. And
right. Max, when he was little, he would carve out rooms in the bamboo, and neighborhood kids would come and hang out there. They were there forever. So.
Well, you talked about something else, and this is going to be relating to what you're teaching your creative writing students. You talked about you would visit your parents when your father was ill, and then you would come back and you would do some journaling and keep track of the conversations. Describe that as a tool. Is that a tool you tell creative writers to employ?
I was doing that specifically to write a book. I mean, I wasn't just journaling to journal. I really was working on a book, and I had scenes. I had, so it wasn't just journaling. I had a real purpose with that. And I don't really journal that much because I'm really busy trying to write a book. I think, though, that there is something about if you write something down, that it's with you in a way nothing else is. So if you cultivate writing in a journal or doing some kind of writing regularly, every day if you can, that causes you to cultivate this habit of looking around you closely and paying attention to what you can use and what people say, and so I do think it's good to meet. You have a very busy life, but if you have a half an hour first thing in the morning to sit down and write whatever it is, I think it cultivates this sense of paying attention, and that's what writers really need. And it makes life a lot more fun because, I mean, suddenly you can use it. Just everyday things you overhear. My wife sometimes doesn't really like to go out to eat with me because I'm always trying to overhear all these conversations. What'd she say? What did he say? So it's sort of like being a spy, a lifetime spy.
Well, that's one. What are some of the other tools you give to your creative writing students, things they should be using?
Well, one thing I talk about a lot with people is making use of places they know. I always write, all my books are set in places I know. Oftentimes with younger students particularly, they tend to set their stories in New York City. I'll ask them, have you been to New York? They'll go, no, but it seems like everything's set there. So, people don't think to treasure what they know and what they've experienced and the small towns or, wherever they're from. And so I try to get people to treasure their own experiences to exploit them. And a large part of what I do when I'm teaching creative writing is sort of find out about them and what they know about and places that they've grown up or places they know well. So that's one thing I talk to them about.
Well, that kind of brings us around to, if you're afraid to write about it, write about it.
Yeah.
So I think we've come kind of full circle here in that's what you're out there talking to people about. You address that in your two novels in a indirect way, but you're telling your creative writing students to do the same thing.
Well, and I have recently, I don't know if you heard on the news about the man who was accused of rape because his wife had Alzheimer's and he had sex with her and he was accused of rape. There is a scene in The Pleasure Was Mine where the main character has sex with his wife and they haven't had sex in a while. And I was so afraid to write that scene. I did not want to write that scene because what did I know? And it was a very scary thing for me to write. But since the book came out, a lot of people point to that scene as being one of the most important parts of the book. And people at Memory Care said, you know, people don't write about this. They don't, and it's an issue. So it's really interesting. Oftentimes, it's a real measure of our reluctance to do something is a real measure of, oftentimes, it's the very thing we need to address.
Well, clearly, the comments I heard from people who have read your books, you touch in both of these books issues that people are facing every day with regard to Alzheimer's and caregivers. And I will remind our viewers, the praise I heard from a practicing physician that this is a fair, good story that rings true about the life of a caregiver to an Alzheimer's patient. Right. So you do touch some scenes that they wrestle with.
Yes.
And our other guest, our visitor that you had at Bookfest, who related to what I came to tell you, because she in fact lost a parent at close to Grover's age.
Right.
So you are reaching out to people in ways that, did you plan to?
Yeah, I didn't really plan it. I hoped that the books would register, but you know, I didn't have a certain agenda. I didn't think when I wrote The Pleasure Was Mine that people would be looking to it for connecting with it over having someone with dementia or being a caregiver. I didn't think that concretely about how it might be connected. It was more like I'm in these people's world and I'm doing the best job I can to embody their lives.
Well, Tommy, I think you speak well of these books, your readers speak well of these books. I hope our viewers will take the opportunity to buy your books and read them, because it definitely will touch their lives. And I want to thank you very much for attending Blue Ridge Bookfest 2015, being one of our presenters, and being one of our visitors to our Bookfest TV show.
Thank you so much, Renee. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you. And thank all of you for viewing us today, and take advantage of telling all of your friends that these shows are available at our Blue Ridge website and also on Blue Ridge Community College TV channel 112. Thank you.
You are watching BRCC TV, the education channel.